Hi, and welcome back to the third episode of the Sublime Spotify series. In the previous video, we talked about hosting on GitHub and deployment concerns on package control, and today it's all about the settings. We're going to learn how to read and write them, obviously, and how to create cool menu items in Sublime. So I have Firefox here, and this is where we left off. We had 3 commits. If we click on them, this was our latest one, edit the main plugin file. We can click on it and we can see that we added just one file. And I just want to show you guys how you can jump back in history. So if we click on here, we pretend like this commit never happened, right? So the file is not here. It looks like there are only 2 commits. It almost feels like we deleted a part of history, but that's not what happened. So if we click back over here, we end up at the current state. So we see there's a file, sublime Spotify rest.py, and we see it right here. All right, so oh, by the way, last time I realized that my VM was a bit buggy, and today I found out that it's because of G-Sync. So if you're a gamer, if you have a G-Sync enabled monitor, disable G-Sync if you want to have the virtual machine in full screen. All right, so settings in sublime-text. Let's take a look at a plugin, package settings, pretty JSON. So this is a plugin, and if you can see, most plugins have these menu items: settings default and settings user, settings default, settings user, and so on. So this is a standard Sublime thing. Basically, the settings default, it's a JSON file. All the settings are JSON, and if you look where it's stored, let's open containing folder. And let's put it on that workspace, maximize that. So the stored is in .config sublime-text 3 packages pre-JSON, which is, the package. In our case, it's going to be, Sublime Spotify REST. And this is the file, pre-JSON.sublime settings. And the thing is, if we change one of the values, right? For example, let's say the true, and we save. At the bottom, it's going to say, reloaded settings. The problem is that the next time we're going to download a new version of that plugin, because the file is here, and this whole folder will be updated, our changes might be overwritten. So what Sublime did is there's another file called settings user, and as of right now it's empty. And if we go to the containing folder, see, it's not under packages JSON, whatever it was called. It's under packages user, right? And this folder does not get updated. Where is it? It's not there yet because it's not saved. But if you saved it, even if there's nothing there, see, it says reloaded settings, packages user pre JSON, and now it probably created the file. Yeah, there it is. So the idea is basically that, let me do that for a second and put it over here. So this is the default file and this is the user settings file. So the idea is that we just copy over the things that we need and we modify them, right? So if you do it like that, it's simple JSON. Then this will never get overwritten because it's basically on our machine. It doesn't get updated in any way. Yeah, so this is how Sublime settings work. So they're basically hierarchical. So if you want to have settings like this, all we need to do is to create a file. It's found over here, and we need to save it as let's just call it. I think it's a convention to call it exactly the same way as the plugin is called. So we're going to call it Sublime Spotify REST, and it has to have the extension Sublime-settings, I believe. Yes. Right, and as you can see, Sublime even shows an icon here. Right, so we're not going to populate that file yet. Actually, we can just to play around. So let's revert. Let's close that. Let's close that. So we just have the settings file, and maybe let's put it down here. So let's say we had some setting, key value. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to retrieve it programmatically and also how to write back to it. But actually, before we get started, remember we had this we wrote this extra tiny plugin just for fun that would open our console every time we start Sublime. I removed it. Therefore, we're just going to, because it was just one line, we're going to include it in our current plugin. So it was this plugin loaded function, and it would say sublime dot active window, and then run command, show panel, and this JSON looking thingy, panel, console. There are obviously multiple panels. Sorry for that. And toggle true. Toggle and this button true. And we obviously need to import Sublime. Remember, I showed you guys in the first video that there are two files that are laying in the Sublime root folder. There's a Sublime and also Sublime plugin, but we don't need the plugin right now. So if we save that, and oh, by the way, see, it said unable to open homeblat config sublime-text 3 packages user because we deleted it. Okay, so if we close the console with escape and just close Sublime and reopen it again. Oh, why are you here? Let's close that. All right, so if we open Sublime, the console should open, and it does. All right, so it does. So we're just gonna leave it like that because we're going to use that function anyway later. So let's just run some code, or add some code over here, or maybe at the bottom. Let's do it at the bottom. All right. So the way it works, you just say sublime dot load settings, and you give it the name of the file. Very straightforward. Sublime Spotify rest dot sublime hyphen settings, and then you can retrieve the value just by saying file dot get key. All right, and then we can print the value. Print the value. All right, and as you can see, the value is value, which is let's just say that it's let's say that it's a number 100. Right. Okay, so there we go, 100. So we can also set the value, set, use the same key, and now the new value is going to be 110. So we set the value, but we also need to save the file. So we say sublime save settings, and it needs the name of the file again. So sublime settings, right? Let's make this one smaller. All right, so we saved the file, and now we're going to say value after change equals file.get key. Notice that maybe I shouldn't have called it a file, because it's not really a file. It's more like a settings loader, because we don't need to load the settings again. So it just automatically reloads. Because we saved the settings, it reloads, so this will actually fetch the new value. So if we print it out, value after change, we should see this one showed 100 and this one has showed 110, but it actually didn't update this value, because what happened is that when we say save settings, it actually doesn't save the default one. It actually saved the user one. So if we go out of pretty JSON, we go into hours. No, actually we don't need to go into hours. We go into user, and we should see it here, Sublime Spotify Sublime settings. So actually, let's just bring it in here like that, and bring that back to the other workspace. All right. Let's do that. So that's the default one, and that's the user one. Okay, and let's make it smaller, a bit like that. All right, so maybe even like that, so we can see more code. Okay, so basically, if I save now again, it will show 110 here, and again 110 here, but the default one didn't change, right? So save 110, 110, right? So let's for fun just say 120 here and save it, and 130 here, right? So as you can see, it works. So the first thing that we're going to do is, you know what? Let's even remove that one because it's just gonna confuse us. Okay, so delete it, but everything should still work, right? So it still should load, let's say 140, and update it to 150, right? 140, 150. It's all good. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a teeny tiny abstraction, and that would do this whole thing for us, because as of right now it sort of feels like it's working on the level of files, and I want it to work on the level of keys and values. So I don't want to say, you know, load settings. I just want to say, you know, some sort of settings manager, you know, give me that key, or, you know, write that key, something like this. So we're going to create a folder here, new folder, source, and so we're gonna put everything under source. And the problem with that is that the files that are somewhere else are not getting reloaded every time we save them. So we're going to be forced to restart Sublime from time to time, and this is why we did that, right? We did this opening console every time. So we're going to try to separate the files into Spotify related things and Sublime related things. And as of right now, we didn't do anything for Spotify. So let's just do Sublime, okay? So it created this folder, source, Sublime. And in there, we're going to create a file, new file. We're going to save it right away, and we're going to call it settings manager.py. And it is always obviously going to import Sublime, because we're basically going to do what we did over here. Actually, let's put it down. This way we can sometimes sneak peek and copy stuff. Okay, so it's going to be a class. Python isn't, it can be object-oriented. And if you never did Python, it doesn't introduce scope like you know, languages like Java do, like that. What it does is you just insert a colon here, and then in the next line, everything that is indented is going to be part of that scope. And that's how you do constructors. It's just a function called init, and it actually has 2 underscores, not 1 underscore. And it gets self, which is a reference to the self object, which is a very common Python thing. So it gets a settings file name, because this is what we wanted to do, right? And again, another scope, and we store it in a private variable. And notice that if you're new to Python, this is just a convention. So this variable is still accessible, I think, from the outside. I'm not sure, however, they might have changed it in Python 3. So yeah, just play around with it. And basically the idea is that people are smart enough to know that, to know not to call methods that start with underscore. Right. So what we're going to do is very simple. We're just going to say read setting, and it's going to get self and the key. And all it will do is it will say return, which is a thing that I very often forget. Return sublime dot load settings, right? And it will load the settings for the file, right? And then we're going to say get key, right? And we're going to have also a setting, self key value, right? And it's going to do a similar thing again. It's going to say sublime dot load settings, self dot settings file dot name, and it's going to call set key value. And in fact, you know, this is copy pasted code. So let's also have a function called load settings, and it's going to be a private one. Load settings, get self in, new scope, and all it's doing is that, right? and it needs to return it, which is again a thing that I usually forget because I'm doing Scala most of the times these days, and Scala just returns the last statement in scope. So yeah, let's hope that I did it right. So now in those two places, if I press Control D, we're going to say self dot underscore load settings, like that. We're also going to have a function called write settings, which will do that, and okay. So all write setting is doing is self dot set setting, obviously, with a key, and obviously the value, and it will say self dot save settings, which is a function that we didn't even implement yet, and it's going to be a private one, just for the symmetry, you know, because we have load settings. So let's also have save settings. Right, save settings, and it will do sublime dot save settings, because we're calling the native one save settings, and it needs the file name again. Right. So that's basically it. It looks kind of nice, and it doesn't have anything specific to our plugin, so you can reuse it for your plugins. I just need to make sure that I use return correctly here. Return. Okay, it seems like it's fine. So if we open the console, by the way, not like that. It was shift console, no, control console. Yeah, control console, control tilde. So if we save this file, as you can see, nothing got reloaded. So if we wanted to use that file in our package here, right? Let's remove all that. If we wanted to use that, we would actually need to restart Sublime first. Let's do that. Actually, I just realized that we removed way too much. So we have this function dev plugin loaded, and I'm just gonna copy paste it, not to waste your time. All right, that's what we wanted to have, right? And obviously import Sublime, right? Okay, so as we can see, it already worked. So first of all, we need to bring it in, and the way we do it in Python is like this: Sublime dot settings manager import. So this is the file, right? This file, and this is the class settings manager. And in fact, we're going to rename it. Let me close that for a second. Rename it to Sublime. How did that happen? That's too much. All right. Let's rename it to Sublime Settings Manager, because later we're going to have an even higher abstraction. We're going to have Spotify Settings Manager, and this will be the one that will have methods for retrieving keys. So we're not gonna pass strings around these keys. It will do it for us, but for now we don't have it. All right, so now we should be able to do something like, well, why did you jump over there? Something like settings manager equals settings manager, and we give it the file name, which is that one, and this should be the whole goal of this thing, well, not the whole goal, but one of the goals for this thing was that we need to specify the name of the file once. And why did I call it file? It's not why did I call it py? It's not py, it's Sublime settings. See, we already made a mistake, so if we had to specify it multiple times, we would probably make more mistakes. Anyway, so we can play around with it in the same way we did was the other one. So we just say read, how do we call the read setting, and we give it the key, remember this one, and this is our value, and later we can also say settings, let's print it out first, print value, Oh, and it doesn't work. It says, what does it say? Name settings manager is not defined. We typed it right. It's source Sublime settings manager, and we're importing source Sublime settings manager. Import settings manager as. All right. Yeah, of course. I called it Sublime settings manager. Sublime settings manager. There we go. 150. So let's try to change it. Settings manager dot right setting, this one, and the new value is going to be 160. And after that, we're going to say second value equals settings manager dot read setting key and print second value. Something went wrong again. Right setting is not defined. Oh, because settings manager dot. There we go. All right, 150, 160. Yay, it works. Okay, so let's remove all of that for now. We can leave the import. Let's leave it like that. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create menus. Menus like this, right? And there are three places in Sublime where we can put menus. We can put them in the menu bar. We can put them in into this right-click menu, and also into that right-click menu. So in order to do that, all we need to do is we create a file here, and depending on the name, Sublime will know where to put it. So in our case, it's main dot sublime hyphen menu. It could also be sidebar, I think sidebar with a space. Let me check. Yep, sidebar with a space, but capital B, and then it will be here. And then there's also context. That would be the right click of the file, but in our case it's just main, right? And this let's actually maximize it. Okay, so we got the main sublime.menu. All right, so in here, because we're not creating a top level menu, we have to replicate this whole tree. So we have to replicate preferences, and then package settings, and only then we can start building our own tiny item. So this whole thing is a JSON array, and we're going to say caption, sorry about that, preferences, right? And it also has a mnemonic, and the mnemonic is N, right? So if I press Alt N, then it opens this item. So the mnemonics are those letters that are with an underscore. So if I press P for example, then this package setting should open, right? So those are mnemonics, and we should replicate them as well. It has an ID, and the ID is just preferences, so lowercase, and it has children, right? And children is a string, obviously. It should be a proper JSON. It's not like in JavaScript, right? And children is obviously an array, and the first item is going to be it's a similar structure, so maybe we can copy paste that actually, right? So the caption is package settings. I don't know why my Sublime is so slow all of a sudden. Package settings, and the mnemonic is P. We're building this one right now. This one, the mnemonic is P. Actually, you know what? I realized that my VM works better if it's not in full screen. So let's do that. Okay, so we still got the workspaces and everything, right? Okay, so Yeah, where did we leave off? Okay, mnemonic P. So the ID is package hyphen settings, and again it has an array of children, right? And all right, and obviously the whole thing is an object. This is why Sublime is barking at me right here, and it doesn't end here; it ends over here, right? And if I press Command Shift P and type in reindent lines, then this will happen, which is not what we want. That does not look good. Okay, there we go. Children, and so we're going to create our own now, right? It's going to have a similar structure, but this time we're not going to make this mistake. We're going to copy that, right? Okay, so it's going to be called Sublime Spotify REST. Actually, we don't have a mnemonic, and we don't even need an ID because we're not gonna have children and stuff. So so it just has a caption and children. Okay, and over here, what we're going to have is commands, right? So these two, doesn't matter which actually, these two are commands. In fact, they go straight to a built-in command called open file. So in fact, you know what? I'm just going to copy paste that because I don't want to waste your time, right? So let me close that console thing. So what we have here are, we can collapse that and collapse that. Okay, so we have children was two items. The first one is a command, open file, and it has arguments. And the only argument is file, which will go to this packages variable, which Sublime will insert for us, right? And this will be the allocation of the packages folder. So it's basically going to be this folder, and then Sublime Spotify.sublime settings, and the caption is going to be settings default, and the other one is this one, command open file and user. So basically it's the same, it's a very similar one, but instead of going into our packages, it goes into user. And notice that this is some UTF-8 symbol. I have a plugin that highlights them. Okay, that's all we need to do. So if we save that now, we have preferences, package settings, and all of a sudden Sublime Spotify REST, and this should work. So if I press here, it opens the file even though it doesn't exist. So right, so if I save it, it says unable to save, no such file or directory. That's interesting, but it should work for the user file, right? Which I thought that we still had values in it. Oh, right, I called it wrong because I copy pasted it. Sorry, I copy pasted that from my previous version where it's not called Sublime Spotify, it's called Sublime Spotify REST, REST, and REST. Okay, so the default one is here. Maybe we can save it now. No, we still can't, but it should work for the user one. Yes, there it is. It's here, and we can change stuff in here. Right. Cool. Okay, so that's working, but this is not how Sublime users usually interact with Sublime. Usually they don't go with the mouse. Usually they open the command palette and they type some stuff in and it should pop up. All we need to do is to create a file called Sublime, was an extension of Sublime Commands. Right, so we're going to save it again as Sublime Spotify REST, but the extension is going to be Sublime Commands. And all we need to do in here is we just need to copy paste these two commands, I believe. So this whole thing, right? If we just put it in here, Sublime Commands, and let's indent it properly. There we go. Let's call them Spotify, and over here Spotify. All right, and that should be enough. So right now, if I say Command-Shift-P and I tap in Spotify, as we can see there over there, so I can click on that one and it just works, magically works. All right, so now I'm going to show you something better than what we did in the previous one, because at some point Sublime started doing that. So if I go to Preferences and I go to Settings, so these are the settings of Sublime itself, and it works the same way. There's a default file and there's a user file, and you used to have two menu items the same way as the plugins have. This is why they mimicked it, but at some point it switched to doing that. So you just have settings and you click on that and a new instance of Sublime opens, and it has the defaults on the left and the user on the right. And this is what we're going to do for our settings, which is much sexier. Let's start backwards. Let's go to here, right? And instead of having two of them, we're going to have one, right? We're going to have one, and it's going to open our own command, right? No, our own command, and it doesn't have arguments or anything. It's just going to be called Sublime Spotify REST settings, okay? And it still has a caption, and the caption is going to be Spotify settings. I'm not even sure. Should we call it Spotify REST? Yeah, let's leave Spotify. Okay. So it's like that and like that, and there is a comma here now. Okay, so that's it. Command and caption. And you know what? Let's actually have caption first and then the command. Okay, so the thing is, this command doesn't exist yet. So if we say Command-Shift-P now, we type in Spotify, hold up, Spotify, so nothing happens. And this is what Sublime is doing if the command doesn't exist. So let's create a command. So we go back to our main file. We create a class. Sorry, that's not the main file. We create a class over here, and we're going to call it Sublime. How did we call the command? Sublime Spotify REST settings. Okay, so we call it Sublime Spotify REST settings, and it has to end with command, right? So Sublime will look at that class, and it will convert. It will convert what we just wrote into that, right? So it will strip off the command and it will lowercase that, and then it will be able to call it. It will only be able to call it if we also extend. This is how inheritance works in Python. Sublime plugin, and it's going to be an application command. There are different types of commands, right? And as you can see, we're accessing Sublime plugin, so I guess the time has come to import it. So it's right here, and it just has a hook which is called run. And for now, we're just going to print something out. We're just going to say in run of the command, right? Boom. Okay. Right. So let's try that. Command-Shift-P, and now it should be there, right? Spotify. Now it's there, and if we click on that, it says in run of the command, which is kind of cool. So let's actually implement the command, and you know what? We're just going to do. We're going to create the settings manager, the Sublime settings manager that we created before, right? Sublime settings manager, and it will have the settings file, sublime Spotify rest dot sublime hyphen sublime not commands, sublime settings, right? And we're just gonna put a function in it. I don't know why I'm saying dot all the time. Sublime settings manager, open settings window. Okay, save. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to implement that function, obviously, that method. So go to settings manager and we'll just say def open settings window. Doesn't have any arguments, so it's self. And it already has Sublime in here, so I'm going to say Sublime run command, new window. All right. So in fact, I think we can already test this now. This is not the main file, so we need to reload, right? So if we do this now, it says, hey, it doesn't have this thing. So just going to kill it. Start again. Okay. And now it should work. We say that, and it creates a new window. How cool is that? So it already works. You know, the whole wiring already works. So over here, we're going to have the settings window, which is the active window now, right? Sublime.active window. Okay. And so in that window, we want to create this this left-right group. And if we go to, let's save that for now. And if we go to preferences, keybindings. So these are all the key bindings that you can have, and it works the same way, by the way. You know, you have the default and you have your user one. For example, I changed the go to definition to Control B or Command B on Mac, which is the same shortcut that IntelliJ is using to jump to definitions. All right, so somewhere over here will be a key for Alt, Shift, and 2. I just happen to know the key. So if I look for it, Alt plus Shift. So it will be somewhere, maybe it's +2. Yeah, it's right here. So every time we do Alt Shift 2, it creates actually this split thing. So there seems to be a command called set layout, and as arguments it receives this thing, which has, you know, columns and rows and cells, and I'm not entirely sure how that works. Maybe it's like, okay, this is where the column is starting, you know, the 0 0, and this is where it's ending, you know, 1 0, and this is where the, you know, the middle is. It's at, you know, exactly at the half, and so on. And the rows, there are no rows. It starts at 0, ends at 1. There's nothing in the middle, and there are some cells. So I'm not entirely sure how that works. So but this is what we're going to use, right? So we're going to I'm going to copy paste it actually. So it's right here. This is left right group, which is basically this, you know, JSON looking thing. And now what we're going to do is we're going to say settings window, set layout. Remember the command was called set layout, and it's going to get this left right group, and we're going to say that the left group is focused by default. And let's try that. We need to restart Sublime, unfortunately, and let's call it Spotify. Whoops. Spotify settings, and bam, it opens. And so this is just a visual artifact that is caused by my VM, but it opened, right? There are no files there yet, so this is what we still need to do, but it works already. Okay, let's have some more space here. Okay, so the next thing we do is we actually need to retrieve the packages object, right? Because over here Sublime did that thing for us, and over here where we're in a Python file, we have to do it ourselves. So on the settings window, which is, you know, just the active window, there's the method called extract variables. Extract variables, and it gives you this JSON, and all we need is packages. That's the only variable that we need. And now we're doing a similar thing that we did over here, right? Just opening these files. In fact, I'm gonna probably copy paste that for you. So settings window, open file, nope, open file, and we're going to have this string interpolation thing, Sublime. Actually, I ended up not copy pasting it for you. Sublime Spotify rest / that, and we're going to format that. And so the first one is going to be packages, which is the variable that we just introduced over here. And the second one is going to be self dot underscore settings file name. This is very convenient, right? Because we're still in this class that takes care of that. So we can do that and not repeat the settings file all over the place. Okay, so we're going to open that, and because the first group is focused by default, this will open in the left one. Maybe we can do that. Let's kill Sublime again. Start it again. By the way, there's some plugin that does all this reloading for us, but I wanted to keep it simple because we're already using way too many tools here. Okay, so Command-Shift-P, Spotify settings, and then it opens this file, but it doesn't exist, right? You know what? Maybe we should create it. Maybe the time has come to create it. New file, save, Sublime. Spotify rest dot sublime settings. And let's just put something in just for fun. Is it an array? I don't remember. I think it's an array. Actually, let me check. So easy to forget those things. No, it's not an array. Okay, so it's just a okay. Okay, so this is some key value. Let's do some value. Okay, so now if we do Spotify settings, it should open that file, which it doesn't do because I probably typed it wrong. Sublime Spotify rest, Sublime settings. Well, that should be fine. I wonder why it doesn't open that. Let's see what we did wrong. Settings manager, Sublime Spotify rest, format, packages, self, settings, file name. Seems to be fine. All right, the name of the folder is wrong. So the name of the folder was wrong because we did it here. So it's Sublime Spotify rest. Okay. Yeah, so then reload it again. And now, ta-da, it's open. Okay, it's open with some keys and value. So all we need to do is to open the other one, and the other one is in here, right? User. Okay, and before that, we need to focus the second group, and we do that by saying settings window, focus group, and I think it's just an array, so it's indexed. Let's have a comment, focus the right group, right? Okay, and last time. Command-Shift-P, settings, and bam, it works. What happened? Come back. All right, guys. So what happened was that I minimized the Sublime window, and it was so tiny that I couldn't find it, and I actually thought that I killed my whole Sublime. I restarted the whole VM and everything, and then I kept recording. At least I thought I was recording, but I didn't. Yeah, so basically I finished recording this, not recording, but I finished I finished talking and I committed everything and I pushed everything, and now I have to record the last part again. So basically that thing works now. I didn't have to change anything. So we say Spotify settings, it opens over here, and the last thing that we need to do is we need to change that, right? So all we need to do is we need to go to our command, right, and just copy that and go back to the main Sublime menu and replace these two commands with ours. And we obviously don't need to prefix it with Spotify, right? That's it. So now we go here, preferences, the same as Sublime does it, preferences, settings, package settings, Sublime Spotify REST, and settings, and we click on that and it opens. So that's basically it. And I committed that and I pushed it. So if we go here, we see that there are 4 commits and all of the files are here. By the way, notice that Octa3 also works for Firefox. I didn't know that because I'm not a Firefox user these days. But yeah, so Octa3 also works for Firefox. So there are 4 commits, and this is the 4th one. As you can see, it's 8 minutes ago. Yeah, I just did it. So if we click on that, we see exactly what changed. So we created this main Sublime menu, which is the stuff that is in the menu bar. Let's talk about that later. We created these commands for the command palette. We put some stuff into the Sublime settings file, which we're probably going to remove later. We created this beautiful settings manager that can be reused in every, basically in any plugin, because there's nothing specific to our plugin in there yet. There's nothing about Spotify. Yeah, in the main file, we remove the print line, and we're creating the settings manager. We're giving it the name of the file. We open the console when Sublime starts, and we create this command. And that's it for now. And the next time we're going to create the settings manager for Spotify. Actually, this will be Spotify specific. We'll put in the keys that we will need, and we will also write tests. All right, that's it for today. I hope you like this video. Like it, subscribe if you haven't yet, and see you next time.